by R1.34 a litre at midnight tonight. The price you pay for diesel jumps by over 80 cents. It's the first time in 4 years the price of petrol is going up by such a large amount. Last year, you may remember, you saw protests about the high price of petrol. Layton Beard is the spokesperson for the Automobile Association, the AA. He's in our studios in Pretoria for you now. Layton, good evening. Thank you for coming in tonight. This is a huge increase. It's going to really have a big impact.
Yeah, no doubt, Stephen. Good to be with you. I mean, these increases are enormous. We made the point in our release when we spoke about this that it's actually a horror show for South African consumers. And I use that term very pointedly. It's not only a horror show for motorists, it's a horror show for consumers across the board. When the petrol price goes up, invariably public transport costs go up, and the prices of goods will also eventually go up. This will filter through into the system. So the increase to the petrol price is extremely significant, and it comes off the back of a very significant increase in March, let me remind you. And so when we look at the petrol price, unfortunately, it looks like the trajectory is going up instead of down.
In other words, you're suggesting we need to make sure we get the announcements next month sitting down, because it could also be quite shocking.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the numbers obviously need to be looked at over a period of time, and then the averages are worked out. When we look at the numbers as they are of today, I mean, the picture doesn't look great. But again, you know, the picture changes almost on a daily basis with the fuel price. So it's always best to wait until the end of the month before making a prediction as to exactly what's going to happen in the new month. But I mean, looking back at April, this has just been a significant increase, very big, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. One
of the reasons for this increase, as I understand it, is the introduction of the increase of the fuel levy that was announced by the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni in the budget. The last time I checked, I think 35% of what we pay for petrol is actually consumed by tax. Time to relook at the formula?
Yeah, it's around 38% of every litre of fuel, and I mean, I'm including diesel and petrol, so on an average you're looking at around 38% of every litre of fuel goes towards indirect taxes. Here we're talking about the general fuel levy, and we're talking about the road accident fund levy, which with this increase is around R1.98 a litre. So when you look at, for instance, our neighbouring countries, you know, people are paying R11 a litre for fuel there because they are not adding these taxes to that fuel price. In South Africa, it's obviously a different story. So you're looking at around R5.50 for every litre is going towards taxes. It is significant, and I think a lot of people have for a very long time been asking, that's fine, we're paying this amount of money towards taxes, what value are we getting from that? And I think that those voices asking those types of questions are getting louder every month.
The point, of course, is that for almost everybody there's simply no alternative. If you want to move around in South Africa, you actually have to use an internal combustion engine, apart from maybe the trains, but PRASA has its own issues.
Yeah, but to get to the train, remember, you need to obviously take a taxi to get to that point. I mean, you can't just wake up and walk across the road. Very few people can do that. So when you have to take a taxi, that's going to cost you money because obviously that's a taxi fare. When the price of petrol goes up, that taxi fare is obviously also going to increase. We've heard that very many of the taxi associations have already said that in the coming months they're going to be increasing their fares. So public transport is an option, but as you said, you know, South Africa is a very road-reliant society, and not only to get to and from work or to drop the children off or go around, you know, to the shops or whatever, but a lot of goods in this country are transported via our road network. And when it becomes expensive to transport that, those people are going to recover those costs by making their products more expensive. And they pass that on to the consumer, which is why an increase to the petrol price is not only bad for motorists, but bad for all consumers.
Layton, there was an announcement last year there would be a task team. I think it was a presidential announcement, if I recall. It looks like there would be some kind of investigation, the usual thing a group of people put together to try and investigate if there are other options. Has there been any movement on that at all?
No, I mean, the suggestion was to put a cap on 95 leaded fuel and basically, in a sense, to deregulate that fuel. There was a call for submissions from the fuel retailers and from people in the fuel industry. There was nothing coming through at the end of 2018. We were told that we were going to hear some movement on that by the end of January. That didn't happen. So obviously that's still something that's on the table. I think we'll have to wait for the Department of Energy to come forward with what they have discovered and possibly what measures they plan to put in place.
And Layton, the usual question you get asked as a spokesperson for the AA, how can we save petrol? You're going to say drive more slowly, it's safer too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously keep a steady foot on the accelerator, make sure your car's in a good condition, using the right amount of fuel. And then the obvious one, which is a supremely unpopular tip, it's not going to work for everybody, but if you are in a position to ditch the car and walk or use a bicycle, I know, Stephen, you use a bicycle, that may be an option for some people. And then obviously carpooling is something that a lot of people are floating at the moment. Just a word of caution that if you do carpool, which is a good idea, you split the costs, just make sure your insurer knows about it before you do it.
Layton Beard, thanks very much indeed. Spokesperson, of course, for the Automobile Association in our Pretoria studios.